Welcome back. I hope that whatever you had to find, you found it. I just found out that our interpreter, Amy, is from Colorado Springs, Colorado. And the significance of this is because I'm from Colorado Springs, Colorado. And this is fantastic. Yes, so we are neighbors and we didn't even know it. We had to come to Dubai to find out that we were neighbors. Colorado Springs, Colorado is home to the United States Olympic Committee and is now known as Olympic City, USA. So we're very excited to be here with you. So now we have my colleague right here and my neighbor will be working right now with us for this next segment. Okay, so let me get my spectacles on one more time, and we're going to shift gears a little bit and readjust this schedule as we work on our technology. After obtaining his degree in business and marketing, he spent more than 30 years as a corporate executive working for Fortune 100 companies while traveling the world and building his expertise and reputation as an internationally recognized keynote speaker, disability advocate, and accessibility travel and tourism expert. He founded Maahs Travel in 2021 and works across the globe to refine accessible travel, diversity and inclusion training, and define market potential and strategies to attract more people to global destinations. I love to travel. Don't you all love to travel too? And he likes to travel fast because he is an advocate for speed. He loves heights, parasailing in Amba, and his dream one day is to fly in a fighter jet. So please welcome, as we're going to have a conversation on accessible travel, the one and only Fred J. Maahs Jr.
I'm wired. We're good.
Fred is wired.
I'm wired. Literally wired.
That was from last night in the 50th Jubilee celebration. He's
Yeah.
still wired.
Little bit wired.
We're all still wired. I
Yes.
didn't get any rest last night.
Me either.
But it's wonderful that you're here because we've all traveled.
Yes.
We all traveled here to Dubai. So, what is the importance of inclusive and accessible travel?
Sure. So a few statistics. Let's think about this, and let's talk about some of the things you mentioned last night when we were having some folks gather in a circle and talk about things. So if we think about the world population and we think about the number of people with disabilities, as we all know, people with disabilities are the largest demographic. We're the largest minority, which is almost an oxymoron, right?
It is an oxymoron.
Yes.
It cannot be.
So it's a little strange to even think about that. As a population, as a community, about 1.4 billion people in the world living with a disability, and those are only the numbers we know about, right? Those are the numbers we think that are reported to us. We think that the numbers are actually much higher, and as people are living longer, statistically. You good? All right, we're good. Statistically, as we are living longer, the number of people with disabilities is going to continue to increase. If you add to that number, family members and caregivers, right? So if we take an estimate of 18% of the world population, we claim that it's 15. I think it's a little higher. So if we add the people who are living with people with disabilities, their family members and friends, suddenly you're at about 40% of the population that is somehow directly impacted by disability. So we'll take another statistic. So keep those numbers in mind. The disability population, as you mentioned last night, has about 7 trillion, that's with a T, $7 trillion US in disposable income, primarily for travel and entertainment alone. But they're only spending about 43% of it. Only spending about 43% of it. And that's because two things, primarily. People with disabilities either don't know that their travel destinations are accessible because those places are not promoting it. They're not letting people know that these places are accessible, or They're not. They're not accessible. So when I travel around the world and I'm on many stages, one of the things that I like to impress upon hoteliers, governments, and others, you're leaving 57% of $7 trillion on the table. It's so number one, we think about, we have all the right reasons to make things inclusive and accessible. But when you're really trying to drive it home and let people understand the business opportunity there, 57% of $7 trillion, wouldn't they like just maybe 1% of that? 2%? 10%?
Well, I would want more as a business person.
Right.
But, so, talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah.
Why is it? Okay, so we know the issue, right?
Yes.
We know that 15%. We know that there are $7 trillion of discretionary income that people with disabilities have.
Right.
So why is it that hoteliers or destination management companies just don't see the value of actually targeting that market?
Sure. So for a number of reasons, when I'm speaking with hoteliers and other businesses, governments, ministers of tourism, there are a few things that stick in their mind. Let's go back to the attitudinal barriers. Oh my gosh, it's going to cost a lot of money to retrofit my facility, my building, my city with curb cuts, accessible bathrooms, braille, you name it. The first thing that comes to their mind is that it's going to cost a lot. Well, in some sense, it's right? It does cost a lot more to retrofit buildings and other places to make them accessible. However, the fact of the matter is the average accommodation for a person with a disability, on average, is about $500, right? It's much less than what is perceived, what is thought about. So that's the biggest thing. So they always think, oh my gosh, it's going to cost a lot of money. The other thing I think too many times is when I'm speaking with hoteliers and others, they're going after market share. In their mind, there are more people who don't have a disability than do, so they're going to cater to that population. But what they fail to think about is if I'm traveling as a person with a disability, I'm usually bringing somebody, right? And if I have a good experience, in this day and age, what's the first thing I'm going to do?
You're going to tell somebody else.
I'm going to tell somebody else, and I'm going to go on social media. And so suddenly, the ripple effect is all of these other people and the people who travel with me are talking about this great experience. And we all know that word of mouth is the greatest form of marketing ever.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, and so here's just a case in point, an example of what you just said, right? I was traveling, coming here to Bahrain first and then Dubai for World Expo. I was on the steps back in Colorado Springs, Olympic City, USA, and I took a picture of myself in front of my Travel Pro luggage, and I tagged Travel Pro in the picture with their luggage, new luggage set because it's the new season, because we're going to be over this COVID thing.
Yes.
And I tagged them, and they retweeted it multiple times.
Right.
So now they know they have an advocate that's right there. Can we take the same concept and put it into play for personal determination, people with disabilities traveling the globe? Your thoughts?
Sure, absolutely. So I'll give you a classic experience. And in fact, something that happened after I arrived here. The first hotel I stayed at for a few nights here when I arrived had a couple of issues with accessibility. Spoke with the hotel manager, and she immediately said, I will take care of this. This will be rectified before you get back from your meeting today. So as a thank you to her and her staff, I went out on social media, wrote about the situation, tagged the hotel and everything else. And suddenly you have, countless people that are reading it, including all of the people who followed the hotels. So a little paid advertisement for them, but it was well-deserved. They responded quickly. They responded to the issue. And, that was the least that I can do. So,
I thank you for sharing that, Fred. there are a lot of issues that remain for people with disabilities, people with determination when traveling the globe. I mean,
Yes.
one example, we've been talking about We the 15 movement and the amalgamation with the Paralympics.
Yes.
One of the things I did when traveling with the US delegation and having a group of youth was going to a country that knew that the Paralympics were coming, but many of the restaurants and hotels did not, begin build outs for this. So I took my credit card, I won't name the credit card, but I took the credit card and I went to an establishment that I knew could not accommodate my youth and their parents going into this group. And I had like 15 or 20, and the Olympics were done, but the Paralympics were in town, and so they wanted more of that revenue share.
Sure.
So I showed them my card and I said, can you accommodate us? Knowing they couldn't.
Right.
But I knew across the street, their competition could.
Right.
So I just went to the proprietor and I said, you know what? It's really difficult to get in here. It's a little bit too much. We'll just go across the street to the same exact pizza restaurant and we'll eat over there because they can accommodate us.
Yeah.
And I just turned with my credit card in my hand and walked the other different direction. Do you think that that is a way that people with determination, people with disabilities can actually enact power to say, cater to me, I have money, I want to spend it, but I can't do it in your establishment. I'll just find another one that can.
So yes, and so I'm going to twist that a little bit. So we all know that people with disabilities, once they find a brand, and a brand that's a broad term. So if you find a hotel, you find a restaurant, you find a place, you find a type of food, you name it, that they love, that is easy for, let's say if it's food, it's the packaging is easy for them to open. If it's in Braille, it's easy to read on the packaging. If it's a place, it's easily accessible. People with disabilities are the most loyal customers in the world, right? And so in that respect, you're going to find people with disabilities frequenting those places. You're going to find people with disabilities talking about, promoting, tweeting, you name it, those places that accommodate them, that go out of their way and to do the right thing, to make it accessible, to make it usable, adapted for their needs. The downside is all of the places and all of the brands that don't are missing out again on, let's say, that 57% of $7 trillion.
So kind of staying on this theme on the revenue, right? We have seen the international company Accenture do a case study on the Disability Equality Index. And so executives are now challenged to begin to promote persons with disabilities, people with determination across the entire globe to say, how can we actually elevate in this space? So they're in Q4 of, I think, 2018, they come out with a report called the Disability Equality Index. I forget what the final name of it is. Anyway, it doesn't matter on this one. But it said that if you have two like companies, one company, the Disability Advantage report, two like companies, company A promotes, retains, and promotes people with disabilities. Company B does not. Company A actually outperforms company B 2-to-1 to shareholder returns.
Yes.
So the question is not really on, we know the data, we know this, what is it and who are the people who we can collaborate with to get this message out? Who are the folks that if we're turning to travel that understand this process and can knock the door down faster for us?
Sure. So very familiar with the DEI, Disability Equality Index. So that becomes a tool used by businesses to evaluate the hiring practices and whatnot for people with disabilities. It also becomes a tool of sorts of peer pressure, right? Because each of those companies are graded and it's published. So for the companies who are not participating, number one, shame on them. But number two, the other company has leverage, as you just mentioned, for their customer base. For the ways that you're speaking about, it has to start at the top, right? Just like everything else. In order for things to work, in order for companies, places, products to become accessible, adapted, a universal design for people with disabilities, a place of employment for people with disabilities. You have to have the leadership at the very top, their buy-in, right? And then it has to flow through the entire company. It can't be a program. It shouldn't be a program. It shouldn't be, this initiative. It should just be the way that things are done, right? So in other words, they truly believe in it. They want their company to best represent their customers. And the only way to best represent your customers is to include everybody. You can't leave out segments of the population. It's just like employees. I want to work for a company, that best represents my community. If I know that that company is leaving out a particular demographic, why would I want to work for them, right?
What you're saying right now, I think hits a lot of different areas for us. One is corporate social responsibility, which I just wrote down here. And what, in your opinion, do you think is the corporate social responsibility in conjunction with, we're thinking about it, let's say with COVID, right? And no one, well, it doesn't seem that anyone really realizes we're all in this together. So a segment of the population doesn't believe or does believe, and now we get different variants that become happening.
Right.
How relate that to the travel industry on how we can look at not segmenting the market, but make sure that everyone feels included and feels belonged in this organization in travel.
Sure. So obviously the travel and tourism industry has been devastated.
Yes.
Devastated by COVID. The restaurants, the airlines. I mean, any business that touches the hospitality industry, the travel and tourism industry, has been devastated. And in my circles, what I'm hearing, it's going to be at least the end of 2022, maybe even 2023, aside from any of the new variants that we're talking about, before we start to see a return, a rebound. I think it's incumbent, it's inherent, it's businesses, airlines and others need to be, they need to have a consistent set of rules, if you will, right? You have some airlines that require masks, some that don't. You have passengers that are getting on. This is crazy in the US. We have people getting on flights that are fighting with flight attendants because they have to wear a mask. When everything says before you even get on the plane, you have to wear a mask. If you don't want to wear a mask, get off the plane, right? Don't fly. Find some other way to get there. I mean, I think all the rules have to be equal. They have to be the same and apply to everyone, not just a certain few. I think that if we can, I love what, Dubai and the United Arab Emirates does, where everything is mandated. And not only that, but it's enforced. If you don't wear a mask and if you don't do certain things, you can get a fine. And the US, and other places, it's all over the board. Some states can, some states can't. So again, I think we need to have everybody on the same page as far as rules. Mm-hmm. I think once we get there, we can, start to bring, in my opinion, this is not a political paid advertisement. Everybody has to do the same thing until we literally can defeat this virus. There are too many groups that aren't doing what they should be doing, too many groups that are following certain people that don't want to do what should be done, large gatherings without masks, without vaccinations, without whatever. And we're finding these variants that pop up. We need to squash it.
So I want to shift gears just a little bit. Two things I want to do. The first is I want to talk a little bit about travel and universal design. So yes, as we're looking for the future, we're thinking about, this expo 5 years from now, and what can we do in the interim to begin to welcome the world already after this closes down in March? How do we welcome the world again in the next expo that's coming up, and kind of talk about universal design in that structure? And then second, I want to talk about
the Maahs company and what you have founded and what you have found specifically for persons with disabilities traveling that you see kind of your insights into the future. So those two questions to you, sir.
Okay. So with respect to Expo, I think in many ways, this has been a great learning experience for us, right? Many experts were hired to help make Expo as accessible as possible. Was it perfect? No, I think we can all admit there are things that popped up in Expo while we were trying to get from the gate to the pavilion or from pavilion to pavilion. So no, not 100%. In some forms, lack of communication, different types of communication, different way things were built from pavilion to pavilion for accessibility, and other things. But I do think it becomes, for us, let's take it as a learning tool. Let's literally catalog everything that people have found, and let this be the blueprint, right? And we've talked about this with our coalition, that going forward, our charge as a coalition is to make all future expos accessible, adapted, accessible for everyone. And so the little glitches that we're finding here, during Expo for the 6 months it's taking place, let's work on it. Let's work on it for the next one. Let's learn from this and make the next one better. And we'll get to that point where you and I aren't having this conversation because we've reached the point where things are as they should be.
So the zero project.
The zero project, right? Zero. With respect to my company, as you mentioned in your very gracious introduction, I spent a lot of years as a corporate executive traveling the world on business and establishing partnerships. And as a person with a disability since the age of 18, doing that, I learned that, as you well know, place to place, even within the United States, the term accessibility means many different things. Even 31 years past the Americans with Disabilities Act, the term accessibility just means still way too many things. So we have to get better at that. The other thing that I found is that it's given me a really great opportunity when I'm traveling to educate, not just when I'm on a stage and I'm in front of people talking about all of this and many other things, but if I'm meeting with that hotel manager, or if I'm meeting with that business owner or that restaurant owner, I can show them, the things that can help improve the accessibility of their business, not just for me, but for others to follow, right? And I'm not talking just about mobility impairments. I'm taking into account other forms of disability, hearing impaired, sight impaired, you name it. And I think as a disability population, if we get better at educating the rest of the world, we're going to get to that point where things will get better. As you mentioned, using your voice and standing up and grabbing that power. You have to grab the power in the right way.
Yes.
There are too many people, and I'm going to say this publicly, and I have before, there are too many people with disabilities, in my opinion, friends included, that do it in a very angry, inappropriate way. I think you have to approach it the right way. You have to be level-headed and think of it as an education opportunity, as a discussion versus an attack. And sometimes it's an attack and it shouldn't be. You're not going to accomplish things that way. So to answer your question for my business, 2 years ago, after all those years as a corporate executive, everything that I was doing on a global stage was important and it made a difference, but it felt like it was part-time. And so my passion is, what I'm doing now. And I felt that I wasn't achieving my passion on a full-time basis. So I went to my boss and I said, it's time. I got to go. Yeah. And I started my business consulting and working with others, collaborating with other businesses, because I do believe in the power of numbers and the strength of numbers and collaboration to make a difference around the world. And that's what we're doing now.
Well, I thought that your passion was to get in a fighter jet.
Well, that's
Tell
on
me
the
about
list.
that.
Yes. Well, so,
It's on
you
the
know,
list.
it's on the list. You know, even before my accident, you know, I had a thing, and not to coin a phrase out of a Top Gun movie, the need for speed,
The
but
need for speed.
but it really was just a thing. It's that thrill. It's that whatever it is. And so did it as a young person before my accident, and then after my accident, just you know, that kind of adventurous kind of thing. Was able to go parasailing in Aruba. I was on vacation in Aruba and I saw this pier they were doing parasailing. And so I went to the gentleman one day and he was from Germany. And I said, have you ever taken anyone with a disability, you know, and parasailing? And he said, no. And I said, do you want to try it? And he said, sure. He said, come back in 2 days. I'll take care of you. So I did. I came back in 2 days and sure enough, there were these two young Aruban boys who took me out on their boat, and I was 500 feet in the air for about 45 minutes and loving every minute of it. So
So this is amazing. It's not amazing to me, but you know, for those of us that have already, what I say, drink the Kool-Aid or drink the tea, we already are part of the disability community, is we love the experience just like anyone else does.
exactly.
And so, you know, I think it's important for us to articulate that to the hoteliers or to the destination management companies to say that I want to participate too. I was turned away from a ride because I like roller coasters, but my leg was going to be dangling and they didn't want my leg to fly off with the artificial leg and knock somebody in the head. I said, it doesn't fly off, it doesn't come off. I said, but we don't know that, sir. We want to make sure that our customers are safe.
Right.
Yeah, well, they're safe.
Yeah.
So I think that when we're talking about travel and destinations, how are we to look at ableism and how do we break that and communicate that to individuals to let them know, hey, I'm okay, we're good. I've been living with this for quite some time. I think I know more than you know and your fears.
Sure.
Because oftentimes we will place onto others what we believe they can or cannot do, which is based upon what we believe we could or could not do if we were in their situation. Right. So kind of talk about that in the remaining minutes that we have here on just how we advance, you know, and get rid of ableism.
Yes. So again, I'll go back to something I said earlier. I think it's incumbent upon us as a disability population to do a better job of educating, right? I'm not saying we do a poor job. I think we need to do more. And I think we need to have more opportunity to be on the same stage as others. So I'll give you an interesting example. So a few months back, I was in touch with a business owner over in the UK who works with DMCs in the travel business all over the world. And I said to her, I said, do you ever work with anybody on accessibility for your events? So if John's having a 30th anniversary and he wants to do it in Sorrento, Italy, and he's bringing all these people in, do you ever, you know, do you ever bring up the issue of accessibility? And she said, no. And I thought to myself, holy God, like, why are you not including people with disabilities? Because I will guarantee at least one person on that list for that event, whether it's a wedding and whatever it is, I will guarantee you at least one person has some type of disability. If you're excluding them, their family members are probably not going to come, et cetera, et cetera. So they're missing out not only on the opportunity to be more inclusive for people with disabilities, but they're missing out on the business opportunity. So I was shocked that she said no, but that led into an education opportunity where she said, we're going to fix this. And I spent, you know, a couple of hours on a Zoom call with all of her DMCs around the world to educate them about accessible travel and tourism and how we can help advise them on accessibility, et cetera, in any of these destinations. So again, tying it all back together, I think a big piece of it is education. I think a big piece of it also is collaboration. There's plenty of work out there, right, around the world for all of us. But again, if we start to collaborate and work together on many things, we're going to tackle it better, and we're going to tackle it quicker. So that's part of what I do now. I'm trying to work with others and along with my business, just to make a difference, to make sure that places are accessible, to make sure that you and I and others can get to someplace safely and experience the same thing as everyone else in the way that we should be.
So company, for profit or not for profit?
It's for profit.
Absolutely.
Yes.
We want to make revenue.
Yes.
Okay. So, and I think there's another distinction that comes with that in this concept that we have to be a not-for-profit or a charitable organization to receive gifting from.
Right.
No, your information is valuable.
Correct.
You should be for-profit and demanding what the market should say. So, and nonprofits have to be profitable as well. So
Absolutely.
we have to understand that too. My final thought here, before I ask you to give us how we can contact you, is what came up for me when you were speaking is how we with disabilities need to accommodate others so they can accommodate us. Mm-hmm. There were two people, two boys about 5 years old and 7 years old when I was sitting in a gate waiting area in an airport, and I was showing my artificial leg because I was wearing shorts. And the two boys were talking to their mother, their matriarch. And these two boys had made a very new discovery. They were saying, "Mom, look at his leg, look at his leg. There's Robot Man," right? Mm-hmm. And so I heard them and chuckled, but something else happened. There began to be outer speak conversation, which should have remained inner speak conversation by everyone else in the gate waiting area, talking about the two boys who've just discovered Robot Man. Mm-hmm. Shut them up. Get them out of here. Impolite to stare. Bad mother. I was like, wow, that's interesting.
All wrong.
All wrong. So the woman I see, she gets up and she starts walking in my direction. And I think she's going to do like an old American song and just walk on by. Yeah. But she doesn't. She stops. She leans in and says, "Excuse me, sir, my children, they are fascinated by your artificial limb. It looks like you've overcome so much adversity. You're such an inspiration. Mm-hmm. Would you please tell them what happened?" Choice. I can lean into this moment or I can negate the moment. Yep. And in the space between her question and my response, and with all the naysayers now looking in, I made the determination of what to say to these two folks. But that was me offering accommodation to somebody that wanted originally just to hear something that was that would elevate her two children to create legacy for generations to come. So as we're looking at this in Expo 2020 and we're moving forward, tell us your closing thoughts here on how we're going to move forward, if anything else has come to your mind, and then how we can find Maahs Travel.
Sure. So first of all, great that you had that experience in the airport. I have similar experiences all the time. And you may find this too. I find that little kids, because their filters are different, and so they're more likely to ask you a question, their curiosity, and the same for older people. It's the people in between the ages that are just like, "Oh, leave them alone. Don't talk to them." When I'd rather, again, go back to education, I'd rather tell someone, "I'm using a wheelchair because," right? I had a diving accident. I was 18, dove into a foot of water, broke my neck. This is what happened. Life went on. The big guy threw me a curveball. You go with it. And
I always make up stories.
Well, you can do that too. Well, yeah, you can do that. I don't recommend that, but you can.
Alligators.
Yes, I think it's a great opportunity for education, right? Yeah, I'm glad that you leaned in and worked with these little two kids and the others listened. I think that's the right thing to do. For getting to your other question, how can people reach me? I've got a very, very simple website, and that's by design, that's by purpose, because I've found that most of my work, we'll go back to word of mouth. I've built my reputation over the past 30 plus years. People have contacted me, and so finally somebody said, "You need to get a website out there." And I said, "Why?" Because I'm full. I've got all this business. no, you should get out there. So it's very simple. It's www.maahs, M-A-A-H-S, travels.com. And so I'm out there. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Twitter. Very active that way. Yeah, so that's how folks.
Fred Maahs, you have been a tremendous delight. Great information for us, but also actionable steps that we can do as a community to make sure that all of us are pushing forward in travel, being more accommodating of others so that they can accommodate us. We are about to take a break for lunch. We'll be back right after that. Go find yourself some lunch and come back to us as we are on this amazing day with the UN International Day of Persons with Disabilities. Thank you so much. We'll be back in a moment.